Hi, this is Billy Earl Amos, and I am here today on Eastern Shore Politics with the next Congresswoman from the 1st Congressional District, Heather Mazeur, a former legislator in the state of Maryland and now a candidate for Congress. Thank you so much for taking time from your very busy schedule. I know it's a grind, but thank you for coming here. It's great.
Oh, it's a labor of love. I really enjoy being on the campaign trail, and we have one of the greatest districts in the whole country, let alone in Maryland. And I'm really thankful to be on the Lower Shore today and spending time with you, Billy Earl. Thanks for the invitation.
Certainly, anytime. This is a strange, almost abnormal race, in that you're running against an incumbent who probably is going to have a shipload of money, but doesn't seem to understand who he's representing. Is that how you kind of got involved in this? Is that part of it?
Well, he definitely is a congressman who has not represented our district in a good and meaningful way. What really got me initially into this race were the events of January 6th.
Okay.
Andy Harris voted against certifying our election, was part of the big lie that it had somehow been stolen.
Big part of it.
And encouraged the insurrection that day and went on to get into a fight with a colleague on the House floor. He almost got into a fist fight, had to be separated on the floor, and then a week later tried to bring a gun into Congress.
Yeah.
Then later refused to award congressional gold medals to the police officers who protected his life there that day.
Protected his life, yeah.
And I just decided, though I was living my best life at my farm in Kent County, I live in Chestertown, running a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to bridging the division that exists in politics. My farm work and the Soul Force politics work was my primary focus after spending 8 years in the state legislature. But on that day, on January 6th, I realized I was being asked to step back into the arena in order to challenge him and hold him accountable. Now, in the year and a half since then, as I've been barnstorming the district and raising even more money, you're right, he has a big war chest, but we've raised more money than any other candidate has ever raised in this district in one cycle. $1.8 million that is grassroots oriented. 82% of the contributions coming our way are grassroots donations of $100 or less. It's the energy and enthusiasm of holding Andy Harris accountable, not just for the events of January 6th, but the fact that he doesn't show up, he doesn't listen, and he doesn't stand up to deliver anything for our district in the over decade that he's represented us. He's uniquely vulnerable, and I'm going to defeat him in November.
I could be wrong on this, but I think I've got my facts right, that as a legislator, he has he has proposed 2 bills, both of which were name changes for post offices.
Yeah.
We expect more than that, don't we?
We sure do. I mean, he's taken probably close to $2 million in salary for work. And I'm not saying members of Congress are overpaid, but you should be delivering a lot more than a couple of small changes to the names of post office buildings. Yeah. And I think that when you're running a campaign, it's not just that I'm asking people to fire Andy Harris. I want them to be excited about why they should hire Heather Mazeur.
Right.
And as such, I'm laying out a very clear blueprint of what I want to get done and what I want to deliver for us that is specifically associated with the need to boost our local economy.
Right.
And address inflation, and not just in thoughts and you know,
thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers. Yeah, there you go. Not just in pronouncements that get made during election seasons. I'm giving you real policy to look at. So on our website, heathermazeur.com, under the vision section, you'll find a very robust, extensive economic plan that addresses everything from how to lower inflation, how to help our small businesses, how to boost more money in the pockets of middle-class families, how to grow manufacturing and construction, cybersecurity and defense industries, how to promote and secure more support for agricultural and forestry businesses. the livelihood of our commercial fishing industry and aquaculture, housing and community development. In each and every one of these sections, I lay out not ideas for how we spend new federal money, but federal money that's on the table that our congressman is doing nothing to make sure our region gets a portion of. And I lay out a really comprehensive vision that says this is how we can do more and better for the economy of the 1st District. Let's talk about infrastructure for just 1 second.
Please do.
That's one of the sections of my economic plan. The Congress in the last couple of years passed a $1.9 trillion once-in-a-generation investment in improving infrastructure. Andy Harris voted against it.
Right.
Now, in that bill is money for everything from addressing the digital divide that exists on broadband. You know, how hard is it for us to keep an internet connection throughout all of the Eastern Shore?
Difficult.
Huge amounts of federal money on the table to fix and install broadband and make sure that last mile connectivity gets us the improved access that we need, and revenue for making internet service more affordable as well. Wastewater treatment plants, buses and rail, Port of Salisbury. Here we are in Salisbury. We have the 2nd busiest port in the state of Maryland here in Salisbury.
Yes, ma'am.
All the attention for port money always goes to Baltimore, as if we don't have a port here.
Right.
I'm collaborating with Mayor Jake Day, who I'm honored to have his endorsement and support, as well as several members of the city council. He's doing such a great job. Yeah. We need to grow the capacity for the port to keep up with the Chesapeake shipbuilders who are getting more and more contracts. And federal money's on the table to do this, but only if we have a fierce advocate that's going in and making sure we get our fair share of this money.
Which we do not have now.
We do not have now. But what he does is he votes against these bills, but then brags about money when it does magically come in. He doesn't really do anything to deliver it, but every now and then, because usually of the work of our senators, Cardin and Van Hollen, they'll get things right for us, and then he'll claim credit for it. We just need a member of Congress who's going to show up and do the work for us day in and day out.
What do you think the single most important issue that people need to pay attention in this race is?
Well, I developed my policy proposals in response to a very deep listening tour of the district for the first year I was in the race. We had roundtable conversations with stakeholders in every kind of issue area imaginable, economic development tours, and the 3 biggest issues that have consistently come up over the course of this race are related to economic concerns, and that's why I did such a comprehensive economic plan. The second is the climate crisis. We live in a district that's uniquely vulnerable to the rising sea levels and saltwater intrusion into our agricultural land because of the climate crisis, coastal mitigation and flooding that's harming homes and businesses. And so I brought together environmentalists and farmers to come up with an approach that we call the Agri-Climate Plan for Maryland's Eastern Shore. We are suggesting that, the federal government spends a lot of money and time dictating federal farming policy, but never, ever puts money in incentivizing good environmental farming practices that can help us address the climate crisis. We stand on a giant carbon sink, the land. And if we were to have farmers do more regenerative farming for carbon sequestration in the ground so that it's not even released up into the atmosphere, that's one way we can get a hold on some of the challenges that are presenting with the climate crisis. And then the third issue is healthcare. Whether it's making healthcare more affordable and available, Healthcare facilities in rural areas are a challenge. Finding doctors, having providers available. Our own unique rural healthcare challenges come up a lot. And of course, right now, a big pressing issue for a lot of people is a concern about losing reproductive health freedom.
Right. You're involved in a primary. Tell us your thoughts on this.
The primary is July 19th. There'll be 2 names on the ballot. It hasn't proven to be a very competitive primary.
Right.
We are the campaign that has raised the most money, has the strongest grassroots operation. I'm endorsed by Senator Van Hollen and most all of the congressional delegation, local leaders from every stretch of the district. As I mentioned, Mayor Jake Day, on the city council, council member Blake and Gregory, in the Wicomico County Commissioners, Bill McCann is with us. So we have local leaders from every stretch of the district, and federal leaders, and then organizations. We've got labor, AFL-CIO, SEIU, UFCW, CWA, the environmental groups, the League of Conservation Voters, the Sierra Club, Emily's List, Equality PAC, pretty much all of the groups that get involved in taking sides in a Democratic primary race have made their choice, and they're with the Mazeur ticket. And we'll take nothing for granted. We want all of our supporters to consider the primary a good, strong practice session for the turnout we need to generate in November. But I also want to say that the campaign I have been running from day one in this race isn't about just trying to get the vote of Democrats.
Right.
This is a campaign that purposefully wants to rise above partisanship and ideology in order to remind us all that we need to come back together again to get good things done, that we can stretch across our differences of opinion on certain big issues and still find consensus for progress. It's what I did for the 8 years I was in the legislature, and it's what I'll do when I get into the Congress again. And it's critical that we address in this process the polarization that exists.
Yeah.
The attack on our Capitol building on January 6th and its attack on our democracy wasn't just a one-day event, really.
Oh, no.
It's a culmination of years of fomenting polarity and division among neighbors on the political spectrum. And I think it's our #1 national security threat. We have to be able to come together as a country again. And sometimes candidates will talk about doing that, but to me, you have to put it into action. And our campaign in how we are running this race and how we are inviting people to participate in, across the partisan divide is one that is inviting that different way of engaging politically.
It's an interesting point because if you listen to the mainstream media, you might get the impression that we have right and we have conservatives, and then on the left we have Democrats, and then we have radicals or extremists. Now, I know the reason they use that language, it's a pejorative. They're trying to paint things like gun control and health care and climate change, which, let's all wake up, people, we're there. This is not something that's going to be my grandchildren's problem. That's going to be our problem. So the more people that we can send who are smart and perseverant and are willing to have that detailed conversation to Congress, the better off we all will be.
Yeah, and what excites me so much is the chance we have right here in this district to be the model for how it can be done differently. And I'm proud of the bipartisan support I've received from Republicans like Wayne Gilchrist, who represented this seat for 18 years, strongly backing me. Former county commissioner in Dorchester County, Jeff Powell, who is actually a Salisbury resident now, but does a lot of work in Cambridge and was on the commission there in Dorchester County. David Dunmeyer, a former Republican Queen Anne's County Commissioner. We have bipartisan support in this race that is sending a very strong message of, let's stop dividing us up as us versus them. Let's come back together.
Sometime.
It has to. One of the slogans of our campaign is "We are one." Now, some of that is a play on the fact that we're the first district, so
Right.
we are one, but we are one. We're one community. And what's good for one of our communities is good for all of us, and there's so much more that brings us together than divides us, and our campaign is showcasing that. We have a organization within our campaign called the Mazeur Volunteer Corps that is not just about door knocking and phone banking and doing things to elect me to Congress. The Mazeur Volunteer Corps is about collaborating, doing community service projects with nonprofit organizations and charitable groups throughout the district to make a difference in our communities now. And we invite people. You don't have to be a voter of ours. You don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat or even be registered to vote. You just have to be somebody who wants to make a difference in your community. And when we, swing a hammer together or pack food at the food bank, when we do these projects, you're neighbor to neighbor, you're shoulder to shoulder, you have conversations. You start to melt that. If you pass a neighbor on the road and you stop to help them out, you don't go up and say, "Did you vote for Donald Trump? Because I'm not going to help you with your tire if you're a Republican," right?
Right.
There's a piece of our humanity that has been eroded and obscured by the darkness with which we have engaged politically for a number of years now. And I am very motivated to remind us how to bring our light into this. We are beautiful people with grit and determination and dedication for solving big problems. And I am right there with you, rolling up my sleeves to get a lot of really good work done and to invite a lot of very different kinds of voices to the table on soliciting input and engagement on how we should do it.
Okay, completely off topic. How's your farming going? What have you got in the ground these days?
Well, it is farming season, but it's also campaign season. So bless my wife, she carries the biggest burden of it now. We are a small herbal medicinal farm. My wife is a clinician. She is an herbalist, and we have a small apothecary on our farm where she sees patients. And we grow things that she uses in her herbal practice, like mullein and valerian, elder, St. John's wort, and then we also have a decent amount of food that we try to feed ourselves as much as we can. We have 23 raised garden beds. And some of it is a mix of medicinal herbs, and some of it is food that we use for ourselves and others who enjoy it. And we have forest medicinals as well that are growing in the forest. So our farm is not the kind of farm that I grew up on and around. My family is multi-generation soy, corn, and wheat farmers.
The staples.
And driving a combine or detasseling corn and walking beans, that was like my life growing up as a kid. My grandpa, if he were alive, would come to my farm and say, this is not a farm. You just got some plants growing around some places. Being good stewards of the land. In some ways, what I'm doing on my farm is farming carbon in the choices that we make on how we do regenerative farming practices. Probably the number one thing that we farm that we don't get paid for or don't get any credit for is sustainable farming practices that are actually just really good for the environment.
How important is that? We mentioned climate change earlier. I think here on the shore, I think people are slowly but surely becoming aware that it's a crisis, that it's an immediate crisis. And as an example, in Ocean City, there has been a rejection of the wind turbines that are offshore because people wouldn't come to Ocean City if those were out there. I don't I don't think any reasonable person hears that and says, well, that's true, although all around the world people are doing these turbines offshore and they keep, their beaches are full. And it's not an obstruction, and it's not a political issue. I'm hoping that as we have more progressive representation, that these kinds of attitudes, which are fueled by fossil fuel interests, that these can be rejected, because we are going to hand our children a dangerous world, and it's just not fair.
In the manufacturing and construction section of my economic plan, I call it "Make More on the Shore." That section of the plan. One of the sections is about the clean energy job opportunities in our region. And I think that some of what is starting to turn the tide, no pun intended, related to accepting alternative energy opportunities like wind in our region. Crystal steel fabricators in Caroline County, in Federalsburg, they've got a contract with Ørsted for $70 million to generate the wind blades for the turbines. And by jumping into those manufacturing opportunities right here on the shore, not only do we get to meet our clean energy standards here in Maryland, but we become on the leading edge of the manufacturing changes for the green jobs economy to be able to export our expertise to other neighboring states that start making these changes as well, or to make the things here and export the products there. And it's creating jobs for engineers as well as welders and manufacturers. This is really important work. On the political side of things, there is an issue that has been of concern related to the windmills in Ocean City that isn't about how they look, but whether or not it would interfere with commercial fishing and the pots that fishermen have out there. And there has been some trouble with that, and yet it's not a reason not to do it. It's just an insight into the kind of careful planning and conversations and collaboration that needs to happen between the federal entities that are overseeing this, the companies that are putting the windmills in place, and then weighing the important jobs and the environmental benefit from doing this. I think that we can have an all-of-the-above strategy that addresses those concerns and allows us to reap all of those benefits.
Well, it'll be nice to have an advocate for a reasoned and reasonable solution. We're just about out of time. I want to thank you once again for coming by. This has been Billy Earl Amos with Eastern Shore Politics. Everyone stay safe. Namaste.